الصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعد نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اقتفى أثره واستنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما إلى علمنا ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. فإنشاءالله تعالى we'll continue with reading from the book شرح أصول اعتقاد أهل السنة والجماعة لأبي القاسم هبة الله ابن الحسن بن منصور اللالكائي رحمه الله تعالى, who died in the year 418 after the Hijrah. And before beginning, then from the things that cause sadness for the believer is the losing of the people of knowledge. Because indeed the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Inna Allah la yaqbidu al-ilma intiza'an yantazi'uhu min qulub an-nas." Allah doesn't snatch away knowledge by snatching it out of the hearts of the people. وَإِنَّمَا يُقْبَضُ الْعِلْمِ بِقَبْضِ الْعُلَمَاءِ. But instead, the knowledge is taken away by the taking away of the scholars. And the sad news has reached us that this earlier today, or maybe last night for them, the Sheikh, the Allama, Sheikh Rabi' ibn Hadi al-Madkhali rahimahullah ta'ala, he passed away to the mercy of Allah Azza wa Jal. ونسأل الله أن يرحمه وأن يغفر له وأن يجزيه عنا وعن الإسلام خير الجزاء. And indeed, the Sheikh rahimahullah ta'ala was one who serviced Islam and the Muslims for decades. An individual who was known for his defense of the Sunnah and the clarifying of the errors of deviant groups of the Muslims, pointing out the mistakes of those who fall into innovation. ويشكر على ذلك. And this is something that he is appreciated for. And so we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to make great for him his reward and to replace us in our affliction with those who will carry that methodology of protecting Islam from those who would wish to introduce into it that which is not from it. Because indeed, from the mistakes that so many people make, and often you see people making these mistakes when it might seem that their intention is good, or they might have articulate speech and are well, or are well versed in how to oratate and how to communicate well, except that what they do is that they wish to confuse the affair of Islam by allowing into it that which is not from it. And it does not matter if they have good intention, and it does not matter if they are nice people, or they have good character, or if their innovation is something that has been practiced for 1,000 years, or 100 years, or 1,200 years. Whatever is not from this religion, then as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Man ahdatha fi amrina hadha ma laysa minhu fahuwa radd." Whoever introduces into this affair of ours that which is not from it, then it is rejected. And so we find very often that people like to introduce into Islam that which is not from it, in spite of the fact that Allah Azza wa Jal, he said, have completed your religion. وَهَذَا كَانَ فِي أَحَدِ النَّبِي صلى الله عليه وسلم. And this was during the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So whatever was not part of the religion on that day, then it won't be part of the religion on any day thereafter. But these people, they like to introduce into Islam. And one of the deceptions that they use, or the errors that they fall into, is that they try to present these deviations and these errors and these muhdathat as being classical Islam because of whatever group of Muslims might have practiced it in the 2nd century, 3rd century, 4th century Hijrah. And so they present these things as if they are classical Islam. And they might even adopt and try to utilize for themselves certain terms that the people before them used to refer to correct Islam. Terms like Ahl Sunnah, terms like ulama, terms like the people of Athar. They'll use terms like love of Allah and love of the Prophet. And these people, from the things that they do as well, is that they try to coin terms to disparage and discourage people from those from those who their goal is to purify Islam from any of those things that have been introduced into it. And this is not something new. They have done this consistently throughout the history. But this point of whatever wasn't Islam during that day, then it is not Islam any subsequent day or any subsequent day thereafter. When the people try to call the Muslims in general, or the general Muslims, back to that which the Prophet was upon that day and his companions, they come up with terms for them. And they make it seem as if the people that adhere to this foundation are the deviants or the ones who are astray. And so earlier, they used to call them mujassima, those who try to give a body to Allah, or they would call them those who have they would exclude the one who falls into a sin from Islam. They would give them terms like al-hashawiyya and things of this nature. And then they might have tried to attribute them just to a specific group of Muslims like the Hanabila, or in later generations, they found their bughya, their desire, in the likes of saying, well, these are the followers of Ibn Taymiyyah or Ibn al-Qayyim. And then after the time of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, they would likewise try to say, well, these individuals are Wahhabi. And the reality of it is that these individuals who they would criticize and use their names and their identities as disparaging monikers and disparaging titles, the reality is that these individuals were often free of the criticism, and in reality, those who were calling the people back to classical Islam. But by attaching it to someone other than the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they were able to distort the fact. So while you find ideologies like the Ash'ari, or the Maturidiyya, al-Maturidi, or the Kullabiyya, or the Mu'tazila, or the Jahmiyya, or when you find these individuals in reality being affiliated to these identities, they try to make the claim that they are going back to classical Islam. And they try to confuse the situation more by making it seem like Ahl Sunnah and the people who follow the way of the Salaf are the ones who are attached to these one or two identities that are actually deviated. But the truth couldn't be further from that. And this is the same thing that they did in this generation with the likes of Muhammad Aman al-Jami, and the likes of Sheikh Rabi' ibn Hadi al-Madkhali, rahimahumullahu jami'ah. So they call people Jamia, or they call people Madakhila, as if these scholars weren't people who were calling people back to classical Islam. And then they try to make it seem as if the Asha'ira or the Maturidiyya or the Sufiya or whatever denomination they might be, or whatever these other groups who it's well documented where their origins come from in relation to these people, and that their Islam wasn't the Islam that the Prophet was on that day and his companions. They try to make it seem as if they are the classical Islam just because that innovation has been around for a while. And so when the likes of these individuals that we're talking about, the likes of Sheikh Rabi', the likes of Bin Baz before him, and Albani and Uthaymeen and Sheikh Muqbil, and those scholars past and present, when the likes of these individuals pass away, it's a sad moment, because it's as if the Muslims have lost one of the lines of defense against this type of innovation. And so to connect this to what we talked about last time in this class, this is why it's necessary to get knowledge sooner rather than later. Because if you delay in acquiring this classical knowledge of Islam, this Islam that was during the time of the Sahaba, that was during the time of the Tabi'een, that was during the time of the Atba' Tabi'een, and that continuous unbroken chain that has reached us from then. And nowadays, if you delay in getting that knowledge, then what would let you know that you might miss out on it altogether? Because Allah doesn't snatch the knowledge away by snatching it out of the hearts of people, but instead he snatches the knowledge away by taking away the scholars. Until there's no scholar left, the people take ignorant leaders. So they're asked questions about the religion, and they give answers, i.e. without knowledge. So they are astray, and they lead others astray. So may Allah have mercy on the Sheikh, the Imam, Rabi' ibn Hadi al-Madkhali, and give his family patience, and give us patience, and give us a replacement of those in his likes who will establish the religion and call to it without the fear of those who might criticize. And may he make this religion strong and allow the Muslims to return back to Islam with a good returning to that religion that was practiced by the Prophet ﷺ and his companions, because whoever practices in Islam other than that, man amila amalan laysa alayhi amruna fahuwa rad. Like the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever has actions that are not from our actions, then they are rejected. And like this, we connect to the book that we're in, this book, Sharh Usul I'tiqad Ahl Sunnah والجماعة, where Al-Lalaka'i rahimahullah ta'ala, he says in this chapter, the encouragement of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to holding on tight to the book and the Sunnah, and likewise the encouragement that was given by the Sahaba and the Tabi'een and the Atba' Tabi'een and the Imams of Islam altogether, may Allah be pleased with them. Al-Lalaka'i rahimahullah ta'ala, he says that أخبرنا عيسى بن علي قال أخبرنا عبد الله بن محمد البغوي قال حدثنا محمد بن علي بن الحسن بن شقيق قال حدثنا عبدان عن عبد الله يعني بن المبارك أنه قال سفيان وجدت الأمر الاتباع. He says, Al-Lalaka'i, he says that Isa ibn Ali informed us. He said that Abdullah ibn Muhammad al-Baghawi informed us. He said that Muhammad ibn Ali ibn al-Hasan ibn Shaqiq narrated to us. He said that Abdan narrated to us on the authority of Abdullah, يعني ibn al-Mubarak, يعني Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak, Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak, from the scholars of the Atba' Tabi'een. He said, يعني Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak, he said that Sufyan, يعني Sufyan al-Thawri, Sufyan said, وَجَدْتُ الْأَمْرِ الْاتِّبَاعِ. He says, I've found that this affair, right, the the totality of the thing that matters, the only thing that matters. This amr, al-amr, right? And that narration that we just mentioned, man ahdatha fi amrina, whoever introduces into this affair of ours. Likewise, the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, ala ukhbiruka bi ra's al-amr. Shall I not inform you about the head of this affair? When we say al-amr, a way to explain it here, the matter, the totality of the affair, i.e. Islam. So it's as if Sufyan al-Thawri is saying that I've found that the entirety of Islam can be boiled down to one word, can be boiled down to one concept, to one principle, to one tenet. What does that matter? He says, وَجَدْتُ الْأَمْرِ الْإِتِّبَاعِ. I found that the affair, that this Islam is in totality just following. And this is the reality. Islam, all it is following those who came before us. That's our only option. That is our only option to be a good Muslim. Anybody who does something, who presents something that is not following, then it is rejected. It is refused. It is deviation. It is innovation. كيف ذلك? Allah Azza wa Jal, He says in the Quran, السابقون الأولون من المهاجرين والأنصار والذين اتبعوهم بإحسان رضي الله عنهم ورضوا عنه وأعد لهم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار. Allah Azza wa Jal, He says in the Quran, the first and the foremost from amongst the muhajirin or the muhajirun and the ansar. السابقون الأولون من المهاجرين والأنصار, i.e. those first and early generations of Muslims, from the Sahaba, the Muhajirun, and the Ansar, and those that follow them. Allah is pleased with them, and they with Him. And He has prepared for them gardens underneath which rivers flow. So when we look at this ayah, we see that Allah Azza wa Jal, His pleasure is restricted for three groups of people, right? Outside of the prophets and from this ummah, right? Three groups of people from this ummah. The muhajirun, the ansar, and those that follow them. And when we look at these three groups of people, we find that there is only one position left. So the muhajirun inqarabu, they are all gone. There is no more room for somebody to find themselves to be included in that group known as the muhajirun. So obtaining the pleasure of Allah by being part of that group is unaccomplishable. And likewise the ansar. There is no way for somebody to find himself included in that group known as the ansar. Their generation has passed. And so the pleasure of Allah through being of that group is unaccomplishable nowadays. And so the only position left is the third group that Allah mentions in that statement when He says, وَالَّذِينَ اتَّبَعُوهُم, and those that follow them. And Allah Azza wa Jal, He makes an extra qualification, bi-ihsan, who follows them efficiently, good, in a good manner, excellently, right? A person who follows them in a proficient and good and well-balanced way. وَالَّذِينَ اتَّبَعُوهُم بِإِحْسَانٍ. And so this is the only group left for us if we wish to accomplish the pleasure of Allah. And so this is why it is necessary to follow this methodology. Because how can you accomplish the pleasure of Allah if you are not following those two groups? Right? وَآخَرِينَ مِنْهُمْ لَمَّا يَلْحَقُوا بِهِمْ. Right? And another group besides them who hasn't quite caught them yet. فَإِنْ آمِنُوا بِمِثْلِ مَا آمَنْتُمْ بِهِ فَقَدْ اهْتَدَوْا. So many ayat in the Quran where Allah makes this principle undeniably clear. If they have iman like you have iman, talking to the Sahaba, then they are upon guidance. If the people have iman the same way the Sahaba had iman, then they are upon guidance. And we know that iman consists of statements, actions, and belief, i.e., all aspects of a person and their religion. And so the only way to be on guidance is to do it the way they did. So anybody who does something other than the way they did is obviously not upon guidance. And it does not matter if that person was popular, if that person was famous, if that person was noteworthy, if that person was in the 5th century, was in the 3rd century, was in the 12th century. It does not matter if that person was an Arab or from the subcontinent or of Turkish descent. What matters is the person following? And for somebody to establish the claim that they are following, they have the evidence. Ashabul Adiyya, the people who make claims, if they don't present for their claims any evidence, then they are nothing more than useless or baseless claims. And everybody claims to be related or in a relationship with Layla, but Layla has nothing to do with him. So it's important that when you talk with someone or you listen to someone or you're interacting with someone and you hear them talking and they use these terms that are catchy and they use these terms that are, mashallah, get the heart moving. They talk about celebrating the Prophet's birthday as a way of showing love and doing dhikr in innovative forms as a way of, developing the love of the religion. And they talk about, just these concepts. Don't let that confuse you, because the people of innovation have not stopped concealing their poison in sweets. The Mu'tazila, when you hear their themes, their 5 pillars, right? You won't think of anything bad about them. Tawheed, commanding the good and forbidding the evil. Al-Wa'd wal-Wa'id, Al-Qadr, Al-Manzila bayna manzilatayn. When you hear these things, you won't find anything inherently wrong with these terms. But then when you start to investigate what they mean by them, Tawheed, negating Allah's attributes, commanding the good and forbidding the evil, means revolting against the leadership and deeming them to be disbelievers. Belief in predestination means that the Mu'tazila mean that Allah is not knowledgeable or in control of what we do. The Wa'd and Wa'id, the promise and the threat of Allah, that Allah can't forgive somebody he's threatened with a punishment. And the manzila bayna manzilatayn, that the person who commits a major sin is not a believer or a kafir, but between the two positions. And you say, oh, now I see where the error is. And it's just like their predecessors. They say a statement of falsehood, a statement of truth, but their intention is to use it for falsehood. And so like this statement of Sufyan al-Thawri becomes so important. Wajadtul amr al-ittiba'. I found that the entirety of this matter, the entirety of Islam, can be simplified into simply saying follow. And if you're going to follow, you have to have a clear picture and a clear sight of that thing that you're following behind. You can't be so far behind it that you can't make it out. And you can't be so far in front of it that it's behind you. Nor is it possible for you to be simultaneous with it. Right? We're not on the level of the Sahaba. We're behind them. We follow them and we follow their example, because the affair is al-ittiba'. 3 words, but how impactful they are and how important they are for us as Muslims in today's day and age. And it can't be reiterated enough that this is Islam. This is the classical Islam. This is the current Islam. This is the Islam that Allah will not accept a religion other than it. This is the haqq. And anybody who says anything other than that, then his statement is rejected. Because whoever introduces into this affair of ours that which isn't from it, then it's rejected. And this affair of ours is al-ittiba'. It doesn't matter how many doctorates, how many social systems they get involved in, how many stages of Islam they've passed through. How the code Sufyan al-Thawri. And it's not like Sufyan al-Thawri made it up as if he was the first one to say it. But this is what he extracted from the Quran and from the Sunnah. And the evidences of this are what this book is referencing. فَعَلَيْكُمْ بِالِاتِّبَاعِ وَإِيَّاكُمُ الْإِبْتِدَاعِ. So I advise myself and you with following, and I warn myself and you against innovation. Al-Lalaka'i, he expounds on this more with more statements. And this is the sign of correct Islam, that you can find generation after generation after generation of people saying the same thing. When people like to make this claim, classical Islam or traditional Islam, where are your classics? Where are your traditions? Where are your athar? Where are your narrations? Where are your salaf? Where are your leaders? Where are your imams who said this statement? But when it comes to this proper methodology, you find it consistent from the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam until today. People saying the same thing generation after generation. And so like this, Al-Lalakai, he's going to expound on this statement, وَجَدْتُ الْأَمْرِ الْاتِّبَاعِ. I found that the affair is all included in following. And so he mentions the statement of some of the Sahaba, radiyallahu ta'ala anhum. He says, أخبرنا محمد بن الحسين الفارسي قال أنبأنا يوسف بن يعقوب بن إسحاق قال حدثنا العلاء بن سالم قال حدثنا أبو معاوية قال حدثنا الأعمش عن مالك بن الحارث عن عمارة عن عبد الرحمن بن يزيد عن عبد الله يعني عبد الله بن مسعود قال الاقتصاد في السنة خير من الاجتهاد في البدعة. When the people, they like to make these claims, classical Islam, ask them what Sahabi said what you're saying, right? This group dhikr, this celebrating of the Prophet's birthday, these, going out for this amount of days or that amount of days, this revolting against the ruler, all of these innovative ideas and concepts that they come with, right? Show me who said it from the Salaf. Show me who said it. Who's your leader in this? Who's your example that you're following? As far as us, then here we have Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. What Muslim who should be taken seriously feels comfortable following a path other than the path of the Sahaba, the likes of which are Abdullah bin Mas'ud? This is an individual who the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam praised extensively. And this is why it's important for us to get back to our book, The Virtues of the Sahaba. Because maybe the people don't know who they are in Islam and their role and their level. And so they think that they can be equal to them. And so they say these crazy statements. And they think that the statement of somebody like Abu Mansur al-Maturidi is equivalent to the statements of the like of Abdullah bin Mas'ud. But any Muslim who is valuable and to be considered or taken seriously, he automatically defaults that I need to follow the likes of Ibn Mas'ud. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said so. Whoever wants to recite the Quran pure and fresh as the way it was sent down, then he needs to read it the way that Ibn Ummi Abd does so. Abdullah bin Mas'ud, what was his advice? What was his statement? He said, الاقتصاد في السنة خير من الاجتهاد في البدعة. Being balanced, even if limited, i.e. sticking to what you know. Being balanced and limited in the affair of the Sunnah is better than working hard and showing effort in affairs of innovation. And this statement is one of my favorite statements. It is the statement that with it, it removes any need for anything else from innovation, because innovation, in reality, people, they do it because of ignorance and a desire to be better, right? We should not think that people fall into innovation most of the time with a desire and a to be wrong in an error. Most of the time, the people, they fall into innovation because of their ignorance of what the Sunnah comes with. So they think that the Sunnah was missing something and they need to fulfill that role that the Sunnah was missing. They think that, the Sunnah doesn't show enough dhikr, so we need to produce something new. The Sunnah missed out on this affair of belief, so we need to talk about it in a new way. And so they speak with error out of a desire to do good. And they find the Sunnah to be too reductive or too limited for them. And this is something that even some of the Sahaba potentially were about to fall into when they came to the wife of the Prophet ﷺ and they asked her about the Prophet's worship. So she informed them of it, فَكَأَنَّهُمْ تَقَالُوهَا, but it was as if they deemed it to be too little. And so some of them said, as far as me, then I will pray all day. I will pray all night and never sleep. And one of them said, I will fast all day, every day, and never break my fast. And one of them said, as far as me, I will never marry women. And in another narration, one of them mentioned he won't partake in meat. And when the Prophet ﷺ heard this, he got angry. And he said, what's wrong with some people? Right? What's wrong with some people that they think that this is the way that they can get worship? And it was out of a mistake and a misunderstanding about the correct way to properly practice Islam. He said, as far as for me, then I pray and I sleep, and I fast and I break my fast, and I marry women. فَمَنْ رَغِبَ عَنْ سُنَّتِي فَلَيْسَ مِنِّي. So whoever is not in need, whoever is adverse or of dislike to my sunnah, i.e. to my method of Islam, then he's not from me. That's it. You don't need to hear anything else about anybody else, by anybody else, talking about some other way to do Islam that the Prophet didn't do. Man raghiba an sunnati falaysa minni. Khalas. It's nothing else to hear. And so this statement of Abdullah bin Mas'ud, and this was abundant from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When he saw the woman, I think it was Asma, praying, and she was leaning on a rope, right? Because of the exhaustion that she was going through, he said, Mah, alaykum bima tutiqun. Right? What is this? This is like, do less than that. You should do what you're able to do. And the best action are the most consistent, even if they're small. And so the point of it is that Abdullah ibn Mas'ud is getting this information from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and understanding it and then transmitting it to the next generations. And so he's saying, sticking to what you know to be the sunnah, al-iqtisad, right? Being balanced, being level, having focus and dedication to the things that you know are from the sunnah are better than putting effort, trying to figure out, working abundantly, and those things that are innovation. Doing a little bit of the sunnah is better than doing a lot of innovation. Sticking to a little bit that you know is the sunnah is better than doing a lot where you need to figure out, is it innovation? And so this is classical Islam. Why do you need to go further than that? Why do you need to go above that in your religion? Akhi, you want to drive a nice car and the most modern technology. You want to have a new phone. You want to have the modern technology in your home and in your clothing. Bismillah. There is no harm in that. But when it comes to this religion, There is no innovation. There is no update. There's no beta and no 2.0 and no renewed model. It is classical. That's all it can be. And what is the affair? It's al-ittiba'. And how should you follow? Al-iqtisad fi sunnah. Being balanced and limited and restricted to the sunnah is better than working hard and abundantly and showing effort and innovation. This is the statement of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. It's not just his statement. Other Sahaba made this statement as well. Al-Lalaka'i rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, أخبرنا عبد الرحمن بن عمر قال حدثنا محمد بن إسماعيل قال حدثنا أحمد بن عبد الوهاب قال حدثنا أبو المغيرة قال حدثنا حريز بن عثمان قال حدثنا عبد الرحمن بن أبي عوف عن أبي الدرداء رضي الله تعالى عنه أنه قال الاقتصاد في السنة خير من الاجتهاد في البدع. The same statement. He says that Abdul Rahman ibn Umar informed us. He said that Muhammad ibn Ismail narrated to us. He said that Ahmad ibn Abdul Wahhab narrated to us. He said that Abu al-Mughira narrated to us. He said that Hariz ibn Uthman narrated to us. He said that Abdul Rahman ibn Abi Auf narrated to us on the authority of Abu Darda radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, the Sahabi. He said that al-iqtisad or iqtisadun fi sunnah, being balanced, limited, restricted, focused, right, to the sunnah or in the sunnah is better than ijtihad, effort, work, abundance, trying to figure out in affairs of innovation. Right? Ittabi'u wa la tabtadi'u faqad kufitum. Follow and do not innovate, you've been sufficed. طيب. The next narration has some length to it. Let's see. He says, أخبرنا محمد بن الحسين الفارسي قال أنبأنا أحمد بن سعيد الثقفي قال حدثنا محمد بن يحيى الذهلي قال حدثنا عبد الرزاق قال أنبأنا معمر عن الزهري أنه قال سمعت أبا إدريس يقول أدركت أبا الدرداء ووعيت عنه وأدركت عبادة بن الصامت ووعيت عنه وأدركت شداد بن أوس ووعيت عنه وفاتني معاذ بن جبل فأخبرت أنه كان يقول في كل مجلس يجلسه الله حكم قسط تبارك اسمه هلك المرتابون إن من ورائكم فتنا يكثر فيها المال ويفتح فيها القرآن حتى يأخذه الرجل والمرأة. I pause because this narration is so important. I wanted to bring this narration up in a different gathering, and so it's so suitable that it comes up today. He says that وَيُفْتَحُ فِيهَا الْقُرْآنِ حَتَّى يَأْخُذُهُ الرَّجُلُ وَالْمَرْأَةُ وَالْحُرُّ وَالْعَبْدُ وَالصَّغِيرُ وَالْكَبِيرُ فيوشك الرجل أن يقرأ القرآن فيقول قد قرأت القرآن فما للناس لا يتبعوني وقد قرأت القرآن ثم ما هم بمتبعية حتى أبتدع لهم غيره وإياكم وما ابتدع فإنما ابتدع ضلالة واتقوا زيغة الحكيم فإن الشيطان يلقي على في الحكيم الضلالة ويلقي المنافق كلمة الحق. قال قلنا ما وما يدرينا يرحمك الله أن المنافق يلقي كلمة وأن الشيطان يلقي على في الحكيم كلمة الضلالة. قال اجتنبوا من كلام الحكيم كل متشابه الذي إذا سمعته قلت ما هذا ولا ينأى بك ذلك عنه فإنه لعله أن يراجع ويلقي الحق إذا سمعه فإن على الحق نور. I almost want to not do this narration today just because of the detail in it. What we'll do is we'll translate it. It doesn't really serve a purpose. So we'll stop at this amount. هذا صلى الله وسلم وبارك على عبده ورسوله نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. We'll pick back up with the ether of Mu'adh ibn Jabal, inshallah, next time. And it's an ether that is super important. And it has different versions, but this is such an important narration. نسأل الله أن يوفقنا وإياكم لما يحبه ويرضاه وأن يثبتنا وإياكم على الكتاب والسنة، وأن يعلمنا ما ينفعنا وينفعنا بما يعلمنا، وأن يزيدنا علما إلى علمنا، وأن يرحم بنا وبأهلينا، وأن يغفر لنا ولأهلينا، وأن يرحم ويغفر لعلماء الإسلام والمسلمين عموما. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على عبده ورسوله نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. سبحان لا إله إلا أنت، أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. وإياكم وإياكم وإياكم. نعم، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.